This is a video for Mr. Estep for my 9 weeks exam. So, the first thing he says is that, this paper right here has to be stapled onto the paper. So, alright, the first question is, Colonel Shaw of the 54th Regiment of Massachusetts was very important to the 54th success. Describe the importance to the unit and provide at least 3 concrete examples. Well, one thing that Colonel Shaw supplied to the 54th Regiment that other black regiments did not get is he actually treated them like a fellow soldier. Most people treated them still like slaves, even though, we were past that point. So, therefore, it gave them more of security with Colonel Shaw. Another thing he did is that he related to them. When they tore up their checks, he tore up his own, showing them that they're in this together, even though it's not really true because, he's actually a rich man, and tearing up a check, he can just, write home to daddy. Another thing that he did is that he disciplined them. He didn't hold back at all in their training, which helped them to be better soldiers. The next question is, imagine a world in which the United States did not have the Constitution. What would change and how would this affect you? Provide at least 5 or 6 specific examples and explain why each was chosen. Well, for one, I could be a slave since I'm only half white. And, my father is Hispanic. Therefore, I also wouldn't have the right to vote. Also, under the Constitution, I might not be able to make many of the YouTube videos on my other account due to no freedom of speech. Also, what's another thing? Oh yeah, I also wouldn't have the right to own a firearm. So therefore, if there was a time of great war here in the United States, I wouldn't be able to defend myself. Another thing is freedom of religion. Although I am Christian and our country was founded on Christian values, many of my friends who are Jewish may not have the rights that they do, due to the fact that, they're Jewish and this was a Christian-founded country. Another thing is, I have many black friends and I'm not full white myself, so the civil rights movement, without that, I wouldn't be able to do a lot of the things, and I'd have to go to separate bathrooms as whites, and many freedoms would be compromised because of the mere fact that I'm not 100% white. Another thing is that I basically wouldn't be able to vote either because of my skin color. Another thing without the Constitution is we'd probably be under a monarchy instead of a democracy. Therefore, I wouldn't be able to vote at all. One other example is that I work for a newspaper, and my newspaper job may not be able to say some of the things I said in my articles due to no freedom of speech. No freedom of press. So, there's some specific examples. Which amendment guarantees everyone the right to vote? Why was this amendment written? And what events led to its necessity? Speculate why so many people do not exercise the right to vote, and provide specific examples. Well, I'd have to say Amendment 15 and 19, because 15 allows every race to vote, and 19 allows women to vote. So, there's my answer for that. As for why do I think most people don't exercise the right to vote? Well, it's basically due to the fact that we only have 2 parties, and most of the other parties are ignored. And most people don't like either candidate, and they decide, well, why should I vote? There's no real good candidate. And that's how it usually goes. They just don't believe in either candidate is worthy of doing the job. Similar to this election. Read the Gettysburg Address and name at least 5 major points that Lincoln makes in the address. Write them out in your own words from your reading from the speech. What are the most important lessons you can learn from what Lincoln said? Explain your reasoning. I'll read the speech. Alright, here we go. "Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth onto this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we engage in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. Where are met on a great battlefield of that war, we have come to dedicate portion to that field as a final resting place for those who gave their lives that one great nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot concentrate, we cannot hollow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, they have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor remember what we say here, but it can never forget what what they did here. It is for us, living, rather to be dedicated here to this unfinished work, which they who fought have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honors dead we can increase devotion that to that cause for which they gave their full measure of devotion, that we highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall give birth a new birth to freedom and government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. One point he makes that was really good is that this country is for the people, by the people, from the people. I like that point. Another thing is that he makes is that even though that they're in a civil war, they should still honor the dead who have died for this great country. Another point is that, let's see, he said that we that they propositioned that all men were created equal, yet most of the black men weren't equal. And another thing, how many examples do I have to list? Alright, 5 major points. Alright, 2 more. And, you know, they have to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And the last great point is that we have to keep, together to stay strong. United we stand, divided we fall. Now, what's the most important thing? The most important thing out of this whole thing is that the whole thing was we were all created equal. Yet so many people had no rights, basically. And, like, here's some examples. Blacks couldn't vote. Blacks couldn't, they were slaves. And that's not created equal. Well, there you go, Mr. Estep, and those others that have watched. I hope you enjoyed it. Sign off.